Welcome back to another episode of the Higher Love with Megan podcast, talking all things mind, body and soul, healing and expansion with me, your host, Megan Cooper. This podcast seeks out wisdom for how to live better, to support our bodies, liberate our minds, open our hearts and nourish our souls so that we can expand into our fullest expression and live with love, vitality and freedom. I've been quiet on here for a couple of months, hibernating in deepest, darkest winter and preparing for another year of magic ahead. We're back with a beautiful episode with yoga teacher, author and ritual space holder Lisa Hood. I knew Lisa a long time ago in London when I worked at Fierce Grace Hot Yoga Studio in Brixton, where Lisa taught. I saw her pop up on Facebook a few months ago announcing the publication of her book Moon Yoga and thought that this is right up my alley and reached out to reconnect, record this episode together and spread the word. By way of introduction, Lisa's company LA Hood Yoga offers in-person and online community that offers empowering creative yoga sequences and unique rituals and ceremonies. Her practices infuse the phases of the moon, crystals, the medicinal plant cacao, tarot and oracle cards, and bring you modern mysticism and simple and accessible ways. Lisa strives to bridge the gap between body, mind and heart and presents opportunities for people to connect with themselves and believe in the power that they hold within. Lisa's book, Moon Yoga, was published in January 2023. It is both a physical and spiritual guide to moving and practicing alongside the moon, harnessing the moon's energy to lift and balance your life through mindful movement. The things which stood out for me most in our conversation and Lisa's approach within the book is this opportunity to create ceremony and ritual in the everyday. In our busy lives, creating small windows of intentionality, presence and mindfulness can be so profound and nourishing, and not something that has to be reserved for special occasions. As you'll hear, Lisa, a businesswoman, partner and mum of two, is all about making ceremony and ritual accessible and available. She also speaks to getting back in touch with cyclical living, allowing our energies to change around the lunar cycle and around the seasons, and giving ourselves permission to explore different sides of ourselves and change in the same way that all nature does. If you're seeking a practical guide in this area, her book Moon Yoga is the perfect companion and is linked here in the show notes. So enjoy this episode and welcoming the lovely Lisa. Hello. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your magic with us. I'm looking forward to this conversation so much. Do you want to start off by giving a little introduction to yourself, a little bit about your background, how you got into yoga, and go from there?
So thank you for having me, first of all, Megan. It's lovely to be here. My name's Lisa Hood. I am a yoga and ritual space holder. So I guess my yoga journey began when I used to be a professional dancer, and I was a contemporary dancer and I was touring all around. And I actually got a yoga hook by practicing Bikram. That was my kind of like hook in. I got really into hot yoga. And I also had that kind of knee kind of niggle that kind of really sort of played up when I was dancing. So Bikram yoga actually really helped to build that strength. And I got kind of hooked. And then in 2014, I went and did my yoga teacher training with Fierce Grace, which is how I obviously know you. It was the first cohort of teachers for Fierce Grace, and it was absolutely amazing. And then I started teaching for them. And then from there, I remember I was teaching predominantly Bikram and Fierce Grace. And then I went to a Jiva Mukti class and I was just like, whoa, what's this? And I was chanting and there's meditation. And it was like this whole kind of like, worlds kind of opened up to me. And I was like, wow, look what yoga can do. There's all these different things for us. And then I kind of got hooked. And then I started going to more vinyasa classes. I went to yin. I fell in love with yin and just had to do my teacher training. I then discovered on a retreat mandala, and I had to go. I've done like nearly 300 hours worth of trainings in mandala. I absolutely love it. And then within my yoga practice, I started to kind of get more into sort of more spiritual practices. I started to dive a little bit more into meditation. It was actually in my Ashtanga practice where I was practicing Mysore in a studio in London. And within the practices that I was learning, the sequence that I was learning, I remember I can't remember what day it was, but the teacher was like, "Oh, there's no practice tomorrow, Lisa." And I was like, "Oh, why not?" He was like, "Oh, it's a new moon." And I was like, "So what do we mean? What does that mean?" And he was like, "Oh, we don't practice on a new moon." And I kind of like the next day, I was like kind of at home at like 6:30 because you have to practice quite early. And I was like a little bit annoyed with actually like, oh, this is quite nice. Like, I wonder what this means. I wonder what this kind of, sort of why it's there. And I guess that's where it kind of, my moon kind of fascination kind of came from. And I started to kind of dive a little bit deeper and started attending moon ceremonies, and that was when like London really kind of came alive with like sound ceremonies and gong baths and crystal ball baths and crystals and cacao, and I sort of just like dived myself straight into all of it and was like, what, this is amazing. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where my love of the moon and all things kind of esoteric kind of really kind of grew. I'm also a tarot reader. And yeah, so now what I do, so I've written a book, Moon Yoga. I also hold in-person and online community classes. I hold retreats and workshops. I do moon ceremonies, cacao ceremonies. I'm also a mother of 2 boys and my husband, and we live in Spain, just outside Barcelona. So yeah, that's kind of a lot. I've just jammed into like who I am. That's me.
Awesome. Yeah, I love as well the expansion going from hot yoga or Bikram into
Yeah.
discovering all these other areas of yoga. Because I remember for me, I used to go to Bikram, I guess every day pretty much for almost 3 years. And then I went to my first ever vinyasa class. I was like, oh my God. Firstly, it's strange doing something at room temperature when you're not doing yoga in a sauna. That was the first thing. And then doing all these downward dogs and flows. And I was like, what is this? It's like someone's pulled the curtain back and unveiled all these different ways of moving in a yoga practice, which was amazing. So just my first question to you of when you came into contact with a yoga practice that was built around the moon, why do you feel it is that some schools of yoga, some lineages of yoga are based around the lunar cycle, but yet it's not something that we see in a lot of your average yoga studios that people might go to?
Yeah, I guess like from I guess more the more traditional styles of yoga, so the more Ashtanga, Iyengar, those kind of Hatha, those kind of practices, I feel like they really follow the moon cycles and they really kind of honor each kind of each phase that the moon goes through. But I guess, and just from working within the industry, that those kind of practices are quite strict in their rules and how you practice and the way you come to the practice with, sometimes there's more breath work or more meditation, which doesn't necessarily appeal to lots of people like nowadays, even though we should do lots more. So yeah, I feel like perhaps these yoga studios are trying to, we all want to have more yoga and breathwork and pranayama and song in our lives. And I guess the yoga studios at the moment are just trying to get the people in the doors. I think as well because of after COVID, it's been like a delay and things like that. And, it feels like things are kind of really picking up. But I really feel like, I guess as well from a business point of view, you don't really want to be having days off when no one's going to come into a studio because they're not making any money. But yeah, I kind of feel like it's perhaps a thing that's not as appealing like to many people to move in that way. But I feel like it is changing. I feel like because like you can't help but notice the big fat moon in the sky every night, whether she's full or whether you can't see her, or when she's like that tiny little slither crescent moon, like, she's really super magnificent to sort of see. And I feel like much more people are coming to notice the full moon. I think social media really helps as well. On the full moon, it's like, charge your crystals. Don't worry if you feel a bit crazy. Don't worry if you feel a bit hyper. Don't worry if you feel a bit, tired, or this is all, blame it on the full moon. It's totally fine. So I feel like that helped to kind of really heighten the effects of the full moon, or on a new moon, setting your intentions, what do you want to plant for yourself? What do you want to sort of manifest for yourself? I feel like that's been like a really kind of big help.
What do you feel is behind this sense of resurgence? Because I agree as well, around the new moon, full moon, there's all sorts of new moon, full moon ceremonies that you see on, Instagram or Facebook or whatever. And there's lots more practices built around the moon and a lot more interest in it. What do you feel is behind that resurgence? And maybe there's kind of two elements here. Firstly, that we get to share so much more information now through social media, so we get to share things very quickly. But also, do you feel like maybe it's this kind of us having moved away from a certain way of being, that there's now this remembering and coming back to? What do you feel is behind that sense of resurgence of interest in secular living, lunar phases, things like that?
So I really feel that we've all got so digital, and that all of us, and I feel like maybe COVID did this as well to us, just like because everything was online, everything was on our phones, everything was, because we couldn't leave. And it's like now people want to get out there and get back into nature and get their hands muddy and, do forest bathing and all those kind of wonderful things. And I feel like there's a real sense of like coming back to nature and coming back to the way that, we supposedly used to live, or we used to live, with our lineages before us. But I guess there's that. I feel like that's the kind of strongest thing. I feel like people have been so busy and so preoccupied and like so much to do, that actually when you take a moment to come to a new moon ceremony or a full moon ceremony, it's actually a moment to come together with like really like-minded people, or people who actually like, I want to dive a little bit deeper into what this means for me, and sort of become part of a community again. I feel like we've all been so solitary, that's the word. And now is this kind of like expansion of like being able to be in community, to be with each other, and sort of come together like that. It feels a little bit more wholesome, feels lush. I'm loving this kind of new wave of like coming back to nature. It feels good.
I agree. So just before we go any further, can you just give me an introduction to the phases of the lunar cycle, just for context here for anyone that's not completely aware, and how the lunar cycle affects us energetically and in regards to movement and yoga? So
if we start, so at the moment, we are moving into a dark moon phase. So I don't know if you can feel within your body, like I've been like procrastination queen for the last couple of days. And so dark moon phases are just before the new moon hits. So it's kind of, for me, I sort of say this is like the 9th moon phase that we're just about to go into. And it's a time of like really slowing down, being really reflective, kind of thinking like, how has this last month been? How does it feel for me? And in terms of like yoga practices, it's almost very yin-like. It's very soft. The sequence that I have in the book it's like a lying down sequence. You don't have to get up at all. It's brilliant.
Oh, that sounds nice.
It's so nice. I actually did it last night. I was like, yes, this is good. Well done, Lisa. So then we move from a dark moon and we move to a new moon. And then the new moon is about, so dark moons, obviously we don't see anything in the sky. And then our new moon is that kind of first slither that you just see. And she's normally like this tiny, tiny, tiny little piece of moon. And it's always just like, there she is, feels so magic. And it's about kind of like, new moon obviously says to you, like, new moon, start of a new cycle, start of a new time to either set an intention or work with an energy, or if you're manifesting something in your life, it might be a great time to be like, okay, this is what I'm manifesting. Now I want to, this one thing that I can do for myself to kind of help me move through this moon phase. I'm going to try and make that happen. And then the poses, the sequences that I have are kind of like side bending. So it's like almost like you're kind of stretching. You're like, oh, okay, then like let's get ready to move. Like it's this kind of like initiation of like bringing some movement. And then from the new moon, we move through waning, first quarter, gibbous, crescent, quarter, gibbous, up to the full moon. And in those sequences as well, it's like the energy is building. You know, we're moving up towards the full moon. And when we get to a full moon, the energy is like normally, it's like right at the top. So it's like each of those in between are like kind of, so I like to kind of see it like new moons is like, set your intentions. You're like, right, this month I'm gonna, for me, it's my intention or my resolution or my energy for the year is one word, and it's ease. So for this new moon that I've got coming up, I'm like, okay, to find a little bit more ease in my life, I want to be able to take 10 minutes, take 15 minutes in the afternoon to just lie down and rest my eyes. Like, you know, we're still in winter, it's still that time of year to just be like, okay, come back to myself. So it's like I set that intention. So I'm like, cool, right, okay, then. So that then when I move towards the first quarter, I should kind of start be doing that and seeing how it kind of makes me feel, trying to make it work within my day so it can kind of happen. And again, the movements of the sequences kind of mimic that phase of, you know, stirring a little bit more energy up within yourself. So there's a bit more twisting, there's a little bit more opening in the body. All the sequences in the book are actually very, very short, so that they're kind of designed that you can repeat them over and over again. So it should feel really luscious in your body. Then we get to the full moon, and the full moon's kind of like raw, kind of up here. And it's funny because full moons can make you feel either way. They can either make you feel super energized, really charged, like, yes, I've got this. And then actually they can make you feel really depleted and quite exhausted. But it's almost like, I like to call this like 10 of cups happy. So 10 of cups is like, you know, when you've done like a really amazing event, and at the end of it, sometimes I feel it's after a retreat. So I've done the retreat, it's amazing, but I'm absolutely exhausted. And you're like, oh my God, I'm so tired, but this is so good. It's almost like that kind of exhilarating, like tiredness that you can kind of feel. So that's also the kind of energy of like full moon. And it's a time to kind of really, so it's the halfway point in the moon phases. And it's a time to be like, okay, is my intention kind of working for me? Am I creating that energy that I wanted to create for myself with the new moon? And then the new moon flow is like this really beautiful kind of heart opening, releasing shoulders. It just feels really, really luscious. And then we start to move towards the dark moon. And again, energy starts to build down. So there's a little bit more like inner thigh work as we move from waning to gibbous to back to crescent. And we're kind of, so the energy starting to draw downwards and start to feel like a little bit more concentrated, a little bit more reflective. So that then when we get to the dark moon, we're like, okay, now it's time to be still. Now it's time to just find rest and just feel a little bit more at ease. So there's 9 phases. And as I say, so the kind of ones that a lot of Instagram or social media kind of focuses on is the new moon and the full moon. I'm a big lover of the dark moon. I love a dark moon. But also the first quarter and the last quarter as well are kind of really important to just kind of like almost like find those check-in moments, how you want to go. But yeah, as I said, within the book, everything's really like made to make it really simple for you. I think, you know, we spoke before about it's really amazing to be able to go and participate in a full moon ceremony. Like I would love to do 13. There's 13 full moons in a year. So I would love to do 13 in a year, but I'm a mother of 2 and I don't have that time as much as I would love to do that. It just doesn't work for me. And I think that was a real kind of strong point about writing this book was I wanted to make this feel really accessible for everybody to be able to pick up the book and be like, okay, it's a dark moon today. Like, okay, why don't I just do the journal prompts? Or maybe I could just work with the mantra, or okay, maybe I could do the yin pose or the ritual. There's 5 different things that you can do in the book, and you could just do one of them if you like, or if you have all the time in the world, you could do all 5. It's like really kind of giving the reader that permission to kind of do as they like to do and how they feel as well energetically, and just kind of really tune into that energy. That's like my kind of big passion writing the book.
Beautiful. There are a few things that came up for me whilst you were speaking, and one of them is you saying how much you love the dark moon and actually these phases in between, because I feel like, I used to really identify with being a very on or off person, kind of very all in or very all out type thing,
Yeah.
very kind of black and white in that way. And actually, I feel like listening to you speaking there, what you're also drawing attention to is learning to be in these in between phases as well, so that we don't just have to be on or off. I used to really love winter or summer, but spring and autumn, I was like, I can kind of do without those type thing.
They're my favorite season. It's hilarious.
Yeah. But what I'm hearing from you is actually kind of developing our ability to be in the in-between phases, because I feel like that can sometimes be quite a challenging point for some people. If you think about changing jobs or or something like that, these in-between phases, or even kind of as you're growing as a person, or bringing something into your life or letting go of something, those in-between transitiony phases, what I'm hearing is that we're really developing our capacity to be in those phases.
Yeah, I think it's really important. It would be almost really sad. It'd be amazing, but really quite sad after a while if we had a full moon in the sky every night. And if our energy was like up there all the time, we'd all be like, we wouldn't know what to do with this energy that we kind of have. And I think it's really important to move like water does, and like it's like a wave does, to be able to come and go, and kind of again give yourself that permission to be like this week, I haven't planned much myself this new week, because I knew that it was a dark moon coming up. And with my energy and the way that I am, I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself like a bit of a softer week this week to honor that phase. And especially like when I was writing the book, I predominantly wrote the book in the first 4 phases up to the full moon. And then from the full moon to the dark moon, I was editing, because I felt like I had more energy, more flow, I was more creative. And yeah, just kind of really like using those energetics to make your life feel a little bit more easy. Like, I'm all about finding the ease.
Very on point for your year so far.
Yeah, no, exactly. Maybe that's where it came from.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's getting to know ourselves in these different phases, in these different energies. Who am I in my highest, most active, energized, vibrant full moon phase? Who am I in my more restorative, nurturing new moon phase? Who am I in these in-between phases, in the waxing phase, in the waning phase? And realizing that there are all these different aspects of ourselves that maybe we hadn't given as much airtime to, or weren't so comfortable with or acquainted with, or parts of ourselves that we kind of shut down or repressed or pushed away, and just exploring ourselves as a different person in different phases.
Definitely. I think it'd be really interesting, like exercise or example for you, for yourself, is to kind of maybe over a month, just kind of write down every day, like how you feel on that day. So start from, it doesn't matter if you don't start from a new moon, but just kind of like, just like I notice then sort of like how your energy is kind of working with the moon. And you might be some people are really opposite, they get to like a new moon, or sorry, the dark moon phase, and they're like, woohoo, it's the end, like let's move forward kind of thing. So what I feel, is going to be different to what you feel and what anybody else feels. And that's why it's kind of good to kind of really explore for yourself. Like, okay, so today I felt a bit off. Okay, that I was in like a waning gibbous here. That kind of makes a bit sense because my energy is going downwards. Okay, cool. So then just kind of tracking a little bit of like what your cycle is. We spoke before about our own, especially as women, our menstrual cycles. And I'm no expert on this at all, but just from my own experience, like, having your bleed at a certain point within a moon phase, like I'm normally a full moon bleeder, and like it's kind of acts sometimes also either heighten your energy or draw you down, and it just kind of, everybody's so different. It can just be really interesting to kind of look to see where you're at with them.
Living and moving and flowing in this way in alignment with the moon, how do you feel like it has shifted or shaped your life in a different way to who you were before you started practicing and moving in this way?
I think I'm a lot more kinder to myself.
Mm.
I've always been, I'm a sun Sagittarius, and I'm always like, go, go, go. What's the next thing? Come on, like, let's manifest, manifest. And I think just also having children as well really kind of made me have to slow down, because they just force you to be completely in the present, like you don't have a choice, which is incredible to go through. And yeah, I've there's nothing better than my sons at the moment, even my 2-year-old, who look up at the sky and he'd be like, Mama, Mama, the Luna. And that just brings me so much joy, just bringing us back to nature, bringing us, I picked up this new amazing gardening hobby that I would never have done, I don't think, unless I had drawn myself back to going back to the forest, going back to just sit underneath the moon, or just, kind of really, just be more gentle to myself, for sure. And know as well, like, especially with writing the book, like, know when to push and know when to draw back, especially because I kind of knew my energies kind of sat quite well with the moon phase. Just kind of really allowing myself to move in that way.
It's interesting that you mentioned gardening, and that having as an interest or passion that's expanded as you've got more back in flow with nature, let's say. Because I remember reading about how crop yields are actually more dynamic and more successful when they're grown in alignment with the lunar phases, which is incredible. So I guess, the gardening is the same.
Yeah, it's true.
But if we think about how, gardening, crops, how they flourish when they are grown and harvested in alignment with the moon, then what does that open up for us as humans? Yeah,
it's amazing. My husband works in the wine industry, and we were very fortunate to be able to go to the Champagne Bollinger fields to go and have an exploration of the vineyard, and it was incredible. But I was asking them about, because me, I was like, what rituals do you do for the vines? Because there's a biodynamic wine that you can do, which basically, like what you just said, they plant the vines, or they start on a new moon, especially if it's like a brand new plant. And there's also some like really crazy rituals where they get like a cow horn and fill it with some salt, and then they like bury it with the vine kind of thing. It's amazing. There's loads of things like that. So it's totally true. Like, and they were the same, like all the fields and everything, they tend to work with they tend to harvest on a full moon or around the full moon, because it's when the grapes are like at their juiciest, at their fullest kind of thing. So it totally works. Like, I think it's not there for fun, the moon. It's really, and I think as a world, we kind of really use that energy, but maybe we've just forgotten all those things. Like, I remember when my husband told me about biodynamic wine, and I was like, right, that's only what we're drinking now, because it's just full of witchiness and amazingness. And it tastes better, I think, when these things are more organic or they're more biodynamic, I think they taste better. And I think it's a more balanced and harmonious way, for sure.
So something that also comes up for me in this is this lost art and practice of ceremony. So can we expand a little bit on that? I know that you've mentioned it already, but especially with that sense of ease and accessibility, and how we can essentially create ceremony for ourselves within the everyday.
Yeah, I think that, I feel very, very strongly about this. Ceremony and ritual work can get really theatrical, and I think as a dancer, it's something that I've always really loved. There's candles and there's smells, and I love creating this kind of cocoon for someone to come and enter, and allow them to really kind of like step away from their lives and just have space held for them, so then they don't have to do anything. I encourage people to like switch their phones off completely, not even just on mute mode, just like switch it off. You don't need it for these next 2 hours, and really give people that escapism. And I think just going back to like, we're also blooming busy, we're also doing so many things, and I think these opportunities to come together are really important and really beautiful kind of experiences for us all to have. But then equally, being a mother of two and not having that time or that space to kind of do those things that I do love to do, it's, being that confidence of being able to make your own ritual, be able to make your own ceremony. And I think sometimes when people say ceremony or ritual, they automatically think of that theater of going to somewhere. But actually, like what you and I are doing right now, having a beautiful conversation, is a ceremony. Two people coming together and, over a glass of wine and having a deep and meaningful conversation on a full moon. I did it with one of my really good friends, Sarah, and I hadn't seen her for a really, really long time. This was like a few years ago. And we ended up like having a glass of wine, and then we swapped to tea, and we stayed up for like 4 hours. And I said to her, and I was like, wow, this is probably one of the most powerful full moon ceremonies I've ever had, because it was this interaction of like, two people coming together and sharing and having that space. So then coming back to like how we can do this for ourselves. And I think, rituals are basically habits that we can do for ourselves that are mindful. I just think ritual sounds nicer than a habit. So that's kind of where we've got it from. But like for me at the moment, I try to get up at least half an hour before my boys, and I try and drink my like lemon and ginger tea, and I try and go outside and just let whatever the energy of the weather is kind of just come into my body. And I try and that's my ritual. But it's nothing fancy. There's nothing esoteric about it. There's no tarot. There's no crystals involved. It's me and a kettle and my dressing gown. And that's an intentional ritual that I've been trying to do now for myself since for the last couple of years. And sometimes I get to do it, sometimes I don't. But when I do get to do it, oh man, it feels so nice just for a moment for myself. And those kind of moments are so, so important. And I think the practices that are in the book, the journaling, the affirmations, the flow, the rituals, it's about really kind of picking one. I think I said before, saying to yourself like, right, how do I feel today? Okay, I'm feeling a little bit tired. Okay, maybe I just need to do a little bit of journaling. And that could be my practice for this dark moon phase. I don't need to move. I don't feel like moving. Why don't I just do this one thing for myself? The book is all, and especially when we're moving with the phases of the moon, it's always about coming back to you. It's about coming back to how you feel, to coming back to what do I want to do today that's going to make me feel amazing? How can I make my life feel a little bit easier if things are feeling a bit challenging? Those kind of things. It's like, yeah, we're always giving out to other people. And it's like, okay, but then how can we give back to ourselves? We just had Valentine's yesterday. And, if in order to love or give love to someone else, we need to love ourselves the most first, because then it's going to be easy to receive and give that love. If we don't have that, then how's that other person going to be able to love us and us be able to cherish that love? And I feel, yeah, that these kind of practices, these moving with the cycles, these coming back to yourself, keep coming back to being like, okay, what do I need now? What do I want? How can I make myself feel better? Like, I just really beautiful mindful practices, beautiful ceremonies that you can do for yourself to bring, you more peacefulness.
I love that. And yeah, I think it's really powerful, the idea of, instead of it having to be done in these, big amounts of commitments and times, outsourced onto kind of a particular day, and I'm going to do like 2 hours here, which for everyone it's not possible necessarily, but just doing it in these little bite-sized chunks as frequently as we can to create that consistent tuning in with self. Because what you were saying about ritual, in terms of anything can be a ritual, anything can be a ceremony, when there's mindfulness brought to it. And whilst you were talking, I actually wrote down the thing that was coming through for me was that just having any activity but with intention and presence behind it, because when you're in that, it does feel ritualistic. And me and my partner, when we get up in the morning, before we go about our day and go off to do whatever we're doing, we just sit on the sofa and have coffee together for 20 minutes or something. Sun's coming out, just have coffee. But that feels really ritualistic because it's the way that we both love to start our day. And I think that that's the same for a lot of people. We kind of do create these rituals or habits for ourselves, consciously or unconsciously. I think in the same way that people like to go to the same coffee shop, in the morning.
You have a ceremony with a barista who makes your coffee.
Completely. And even going to the same, going to a yoga class, and I find myself almost wanting to go to the same mat in the same class to create, because it feels like you're arriving into an intentional space. And I mean, I know for me, I have to like make myself mix it up sometimes, but it's very much that creating, we're kind of trying to keep subconsciously creating ritual for ourselves in little ways. Why do you think it is that we're so drawn to this sense of ritual within ourselves, within our days?
I think lots of people are scared, like, like you're saying, your ritual that you do with your partner first thing in the morning, they wouldn't think of that as being a ritual. I feel that people again think that it has to be something like pulling a tarot card a day, or meditating for 30 minutes, or doing a yoga practice for an hour. But as I keep kind of saying, we're all really busy people. Like, we sometimes don't have that time. And that cup of tea sometimes for me, and sometimes it is 5 minutes, and then I hear pitter patter down the steps, and I'm like, okay, cool, I need to go mum mode now. But those 5 minutes are like so sacred, and just waking up with the world, a moment for me. And I feel like people just need to kind of really know that this is a ritual, and not kind of think of it as a habit or a bad habit because you keep going to the same mat every time. That's where you feel comfortable, and if that's where you feel empowered and you feel safe, go there. Like, what's wrong with that? I've had yoga teachers to me before in teacher trainers be like, Lisa, you can't keep going to the top left. Top left, front line, top left is where you'll find me. I'm very happy there. Like, Lisa, I really don't like being in the middle of a class. I get kind of a bit claustrophobic. I need a little bit of wall space. And I remember one of my teachers being like, Lisa, you can't go there again. And I was like, no. And I remember I went to the middle and had an awful class. And I was like, you should just go where
especially as a Sagittarius, don't limit me.
Exactly. But no, I think call it out. If it's having a glass of wine when the kids have gone to bed, I know that one well, and that's your daily ritual. Maybe change it every now and again to a cup of tea if you can. Like, I'm not promoting drinking or anything like that, but if that's your way of setting down the day, taking a moment for yourself, I think gardening has become that for me on a Saturday afternoon, and my littlest is sleeping and my eldest sometimes comes to help. But it's just, it's another moment for me. It's just, and also get my hands in the dirt. It feels good, a little bit of grounding, hold on to the earth. I think people just need to call it out, be like, this is my ritual, and this is what it is. And if it doesn't look like what we think a ritual should look like, it doesn't matter. Change the rules. It doesn't matter at all. It work for you.
And I think that something else that comes up for me within the sense of ritual is a sense of belonging. When I feel into what, ritual is, whether it's going to the same coffee shop that we go to a lot, or sitting here on the sofa, or getting on my yoga mat and doing a practice, it's that sense of coming home to something and that sense of belonging. And maybe it's that thing that we're actually really craving within our society, which is so active and stimulating, and it's so busy, and there are lots of demands of us. And actually creating these practices, even if it's 5 minutes, it's coming back to a sense of mindfulness, presence, and belonging, I guess.
100% for sure.
I
think people can really using like just 3 deep breaths, deep sighs as like a reset in your office. It doesn't matter if someone does that in the office. Maybe if you start, I don't know, if you went outside the office, maybe that might look a bit strange. But if you just sat on your desk, a little stretch, like, okay, before a meeting, like, and just using that could be it. That was not even 30 seconds, but just like a reset for the body, for the mind, whatever it is that kind of, your technique is, whatever works for you.
So how do you feel that this approach to living, to flowing with the planet, deepens our connection to ourselves and the connection to the world around us? Because I know that within this following of the lunar phases, it's encouraging us to follow the seasons, the days, our circadian rhythms. It's getting back in tune with a deeper sense of cyclical living as well. So how would you say that it deepens our connection to self and the world around us?
I think once you start seeing the moon, your eyes will then kind of start to open up to everything else. I always find it really funny that at the beginning of the year, it's like 1st of January, right, everybody, change your lives, set your intentions, go, 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 go. It's like it's midwinter. It is the deepest part of winter. And our energies are like low, 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 low. You know, when you look at the trees, none of the trees have leaves. They're all like in there hibernating. All the animals are hibernating. You don't see anybody. Even our dogs and our cats are like shedding hairs because they're getting their winter coat on. It's like, yeah, it's like spring equinox should be New Year, really. That's when the energy starts to come alive. That's when you should really be like, cool, I've been reflecting. I feel rested. Okay, now my New Year kind of starts. Like, what do I want to do this year? It's kind of like, yeah, I always find it really funny that January 1st, New Year kind of gets that label. And it's like, no. No, I feel like it's really important to just be aware. And I've said this before about we're so digital and everything's getting faster and faster in the way that we can contact people, which is amazing. And the way that we can obtain information and, you know, get wisdom from Google or whatever it is that we need, or from another person. But it's like, it brings us so much into these little kind of boxes, even like what you and I are on now. And it's like, you know, if we could meet in person, of course we would, but this is the way we need to do this. But yeah, it's like getting outside, breathing the air, being close to nature. It's like, whenever you say to anybody like, oh, what did you do at the weekend? And if they say, oh, we went for a big walk on Sunday, and I'm like, oh, how did you feel afterwards? Nobody ever says, oh, it was rubbish. No, even if you've got tantrum children, like everybody's mood changes. And at the end of it, everyone feels refreshed. They feel relaxed. They feel like nicely tired to be able to get a good sleep afterwards. Like, yeah, nature is medicine. It's just the best thing. And just tuning in with those cycles is just perfect.
And can you just talk a little bit more about how living in this way teaches us to be, I think you said, like more aware, softer, more compassionate with ourselves? Maybe you could expand a little bit on that, for you as a practitioner of yoga, you as a teacher, you as a mum, living in this way, how it creates this ability and permission for us to be more compassionate with ourselves.
Yeah, it's so important right now to just be a little bit softer with ourselves. You know, if we've got 13 opportunities to move with the moon over a year. And, you know, in winter, in spring, in summer, and you can kind of take those energies on as well. So obviously we're in winter right now, and we're also in a dark moon phase. So it's like, you know, obviously energies are low and we're feeling a little bit like softer with ourselves. But yeah, I think it just really helps to uplift people to, you know, and also kind of take these 9 moon phases each part of the year, and just be like, cool, what am I going to do for this month? What am I going to do for this month? How do I want to feel in spring on the spring full moon? Like what it is that one, what's that look like for me? What does that feel like? And use those as kind of, rather than, you know, especially with intentions or New Year's resolutions, it's like the year can seem really, really far away to kind of set those like goals, like, right, I'm gonna, you know, go and get this new job. But it's like, now you've got like 13 opportunities to try and get to that job, or get to that amount of money, or get to that partner, or that child, or whatever it is that you're kind of manifesting for yourself. And it just really kind of using those as like kind of key points for yourself. And I feel, yeah, it just feels like life feels a little bit easier now that you can sort of give yourself that permission to be like, okay, Lise, you can take it a bit of a more chilled this week, and then next week you can ramp it up again, and, you know, start to move a little bit more dynamically. And the same in my yoga classes. Like, I would admit, like, I'm teaching class on Saturday, and it's not, and that's like, we're probably going to be in the darkest moon of, like, the darkest of the moon phase. And as much as I would love to guide my lying down on the floor one, I'm probably no one would come to that because they're expecting a Saturday morning energizing like practice. But there will be elements of that. I'll probably do a longer shavasana. I'll do a longer seated variation. There'll be more kind of inner thigh, inner seams of the arms, just because that's where our more yin side of the body is. So just get more people and more in touch with that. Just kind of really try and honor what the people want, but then also what is going on in our world right now, and just kind of really move with that. And I find that as a teacher, it really helps me to create my classes, to create my sequences, and kind of move in a more sequential or holistic kind of way, more mindful way.
Yeah, I love that, because what you're saying is that, you know, it's just kind of creating that 1% extra more awareness, you know, even if, I mean, with hopefully more than 1%, but even just 1% more awareness, even if you are going to a power yoga class or something in the darkest phase, just having that awareness of, okay, I'm just going to maybe pull back 1% or explore what and a little bit 1% more stillness or ease or flow might feel like in this different phase, and kind of play with the different energies. Because I think it's very easy as well. And, you know, it's interesting that you went from hot yoga, Bikram, and then discovering yin yoga and being like, oh my God, like, wow, this feels so good. Because I think in our society now, there's such a kind of harder, better, faster is better type harder, faster is better. But actually, in that slowing down, it feels so nourishing for our bodies as well, and our minds.
And it's funny because when I teach yin, I normally say to people, like, your body's going to be really still, but your mind is going to be like off on its own little thing. And that's like the hardest thing for us to do. Like, the yin practice is probably more intense and more powerful than any kind of power yoga class. Like, it's a real slowing down, connecting back to yourself, trying to quieten down the mind, trying to connect back within. It can be a real challenging time for some people, especially when they first come to the practice. But I feel like if you haven't done yin, if you're going to do anything from this podcast, please go and practice the class. Like, honestly, I always say this when people come to me for the first time, they come for yin. I'm like, this class is going to change your life, because it changed mine. And I didn't even know, like, I remember having to do 6 minutes in pigeon pose, and I felt like I was going to throw up afterwards, because I went in at it like so hard, and I couldn't maintain that kind of strength or intensity. And and I had like this really kind of awful experience, but then actually learned so much on the end of it, and was like, oh, that's how you're meant to come to this practice. That's how you're meant to move here. Like, go to yin, my loves, go to yin.
I mean, I love a yin class. It's funny because, I mean, 10 years ago when I started practicing yoga, I just couldn't, I think at the time, there's no way that I would have imagined myself loving restorative or yin or anything, because I loved the intensity of it. But it's just, oh my God, it just opened up a whole new world. And then restorative, when you get all those bolsters around you, joyful.
Get yourself to those classes, especially because we're in winter, you know, save the power and the energy for March.
Absolutely. So is there anything else that you feel like you'd like to share, or any additional messages around the moon, around the cyclical living, you as a teacher? Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
I think just everything that I've said, you know, comes from all the people that have taught me and all my experiences with the moon and the kind of practice that I do. So go and take this journey for yourself as well, because maybe you might discover something completely different that will be to what I've discovered. And that's amazing. And it's something, I say this a lot in the book as well, like, you know, if there's a pose in the book that your body's like, oh, I don't really like this, then take it as, you know, your body's the biggest teacher. Like, your body's a bigger teacher than I could ever be. So it's about really listening to our bodies and connecting to them. To, you know, I've always had this mantra with when I started teaching. It's yoga is here to make you feel amazing. So if it doesn't feel amazing, don't do it. And I've always lived by that. I remember it came to me in one of my first grade teacher training, one of the days there. And I was just like, yes, It should always just feel really, really great. And it should always feel really empowering. And just take that with you all the time. Just do the things that feel good, do the things that make you feel strong, do the things that you love, and yeah, feel empowered. Feel empowered.
Beautiful. Okay, so just an invitation as well for you to expand upon your book and any other offerings that you have coming up.
So Moon Yoga, just in case you do. So Moon Yoga, she's out. You can buy her on Amazon or Foils or Waterstones. It's by Lisa Hood, myself. If you start the journey, I would love to hear how you experience the book and what you learn from reading the book. I've just launched an online discovery journey called Moon Yoga Full Circle. And basically, it's where we come together online with a very small, unique group, and we move through all 9 moon phases. And there's an opportunity to kind of move through it together. And I also offer, there's extras kind of added in there. So that's about to start on Monday for Monday's new moon. But there'll be another cohort coming out in a couple of months' time. So if you're interested in that, you can find me all on my website. I also offer retreats and workshops, and I do in-person classes here in Spain. But I also do online classes through Zoom. You can find everything on my website, lahoodyoga.com. And just always reach out. I love hearing from people and connecting with people and community. Community is absolutely everything to me. And I'm just, really grateful to have this space. Thank you, Megan, for having me here. So grateful. And just thank you.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's been great having this conversation with you. So thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. And it's been so great reconnecting.
I know, it's been so nice to connect with you. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode and saw it as an invitation to explore the different parts of yourself, to be more compassionate and create ceremony and ritual in your day-to-day in a way that is available and exciting for you. All of Lisa's information, including her book Moon Yoga, is available within the show notes. We are approaching the spring equinox in a few weeks, so perhaps you might want to spend some time journaling around what you'd like to create in your year ahead, using the lunar cycle as an invitation to move strategically and intentionally in pursuit of your goals, dreams, and desires. For those of you seeking some intentional spaces to slow down in your week, Lisa has a variety of online offerings, including Yin. As you heard from the both of us, we can't recommend this practice enough amongst busy schedules. I'll leave you with this question and invitation. What would ritual and ceremony look and feel like to you in your everyday life this year? How can you explore and give permission for the different sides of yourself? As always, I love to hear from you, so feel free to get in touch with your insights and reflections from this episode, and do take a moment to rate, review, or share the podcast. Until next week, big love.